We need to adjust your compensation to align with industry standards. That means a 30% reduction and no bonuses going forward, Lauren announced, her tone clipped and emotionless as she straightened the stack of papers on the table. It's purely business. Jason, seated beside her, nodded in agreement without quite looking at me. The corporate office conducted a comprehensive analysis on administrative compensation. This brings your salary in line with national averages. I sat across from them in the glass-walled conference room of Harborview Dental, the very practice I had helped build over the past 20 years. The warm nautical blues and soft beechwood that once made the space feel welcoming had been painted over in a cold, uniform gray to match the new branding imposed by Mariner Dental Group, the corporation that had recently acquired us. I kept my expression calm, even as frustration boiled beneath the surface. "I'll need to review the proposal," I said, accepting the folder they slid toward me. My voice was even and measured, just as it had been during thousands of patient interactions throughout my career. "Of course," Lauren said, managing a tight smile, clearly relieved I hadn't pushed back. "We'll need your decision by Friday." My name is Elaine Porter, and until 3 months ago I was the office manager of one of the busiest dental practices in Savannah, Georgia. For 2 decades, I worked alongside Dr. Gerald Monroe, helping grow Harborview Dental from a modest 2-room clinic into a respected practice with 7 chairs and over 3,500 loyal patients. When Dr. Monroe announced his retirement last fall, our team was understandably anxious. But he had reassured us, saying the group purchasing the practice valued everything that made us special. "They're keeping the staff," he had promised. "They understand that people, not just numbers, make a practice successful." What Dr. Monroe didn't understand was that corporate dentistry plays by different rules. Relationships come second to efficiency. Loyalty can't be measured on a spreadsheet, and apparently, neither can 20 years of experience. On my way back to my office, I passed by Maya, our newest hygienist, who looked up from prepping her station and gave me a worried glance. "Everything all right?" she asked softly. "Just some administrative changes being reviewed," I replied. I wasn't ready to talk about it. Not yet. Not until I had fully processed what this meant for me. Back at my desk, I opened the drawer where I had quietly stored a business card I'd received at the Southeastern Dental Conference 2 weeks earlier. During a lunch break, Dr. Adam Rivera had introduced himself and complimented the way Harborview was run. "If you're ever open to something new," he'd said, "I'd love to talk more." At the time, I had smiled politely and tucked the card away. Now, I picked up my phone and dialed the number. I've never seen myself as irreplaceable. In practice management, your job is to build systems that work smoothly regardless of who's in charge. But there's a key difference between efficient systems and meaningful relationships. Anyone can follow a checklist. Trust, however, takes years to earn. Dr. Monroe understood that the day he hired me. I was 35 then, a single mom with office experience but no background in dentistry. He looked past the resume and said, "Elaine, I can teach you dental codes and procedure names. What I can't teach is how to truly care about people." Over the years, I became more than the office manager. I was the familiar face patients saw when they walked through the door, the voice that called to check on them after root canals or extractions. I remembered their grandchildren's names, knew who needed help with scheduling around school pickup, and which patients quietly struggled to cover their bills. And now, after everything, they were reducing me to a cost adjustment. That was when I knew I wasn't just going to review the proposal. I was going to find a way forward on my own terms. I was the one who remembered their children's names, their grandbabies' birthdays, and which college they'd gotten into. I knew who needed extra time in the chair due to anxiety, who always requested an early morning slot, and who would drive across town just to see their favorite hygienist. When our elderly patients couldn't drive anymore, I arranged rides. When families struggled financially, I'd work every angle with the insurance companies to get them the most coverage possible. And when frightened little ones came in gripping their parents' hands, I had a drawer full of toys and knew just the right words to soothe their nerves. The thank you cards tucked into my desk drawer didn't say, "To Harborview Dental." They were addressed to me, to Elaine. Some were handwritten notes, others were photos from weddings or graduations, always with a message that said, in one way or another, "Thank you for being there." But none of that mattered to Lauren and Jason. They'd been running Harborview for 3 months now, ever since Mariner Dental Group took over. They brought with them manuals, metrics, and policies that left little room for personal touches. Dr. Monroe hadn't even finished clearing his desk before they replaced our cozy waiting room with stiff gray chairs and generic corporate artwork. The team tried to adjust, and I tried to advocate for them. Our Thursday evening appointments are essential for working families, I reminded them gently during a meeting. And Mrs. Lancaster's been baking homemade muffins for the staff on Fridays for over a decade. It's not just a sweet gesture, it's her way of staying connected. Jason would give a half smile and say, "We appreciate your input, Elaine," right before moving ahead with whatever directive corporate had handed down. And I began to notice the change, not in the staff, but in the patients. The puzzled expressions at check-in when things felt rushed. The frowns when they learned services had been discontinued. The hesitations when asked to prepay. Just last week, Mrs. Powell, one of our longtime patients, had pulled me aside and whispered, "Did Dr. Monroe really retire? This place doesn't feel the same anymore." I'd smiled and assured her we were still committed to excellent care, but as I walked back to my office that day, still reeling from the conversation with Lauren and Jason about my 30% pay cut, I wasn't sure that was true anymore. Later that afternoon, I met Dr. Adam Rivera at the Magnolia Table, a cozy cafe tucked away from the downtown tourist bustle. We chose a corner table far from the lunch crowd, and I told him everything. "They want to cut my salary by 1/3, I said, keeping my voice low. "No more performance bonuses either." Adam stirred his iced tea, his brow furrowed. "That's happening more and more," he said quietly. Corporate buyers see admin staff as overhead to reduce, not people to retain. At 45, Dr. Rivera had a calm confidence about him, the kind of presence you trust immediately. He'd spent the last 10 years moving between dental groups, but had grown weary of the corporate system. "I've been saving to start my own practice," he said. Smaller, more intentional. The kind of place where patients are known by name, not appointment type. Like what Harborview used to be. A lump formed in my throat, and I nodded. "That does sound familiar," I said, my voice softer than I intended. He leaned forward, his tone earnest. "Elaine, I've asked around. Everyone in Savannah's dental circle knows you're the one who built Harborview's culture. Dr. Monroe was a great clinician, but you were the heart of that practice." His praise caught me off guard. "We were a team," I said, half embarrassed, half proud. "A team you coordinated," he insisted. "And I'd like to propose a partnership, not a job. I've got the dental expertise and some startup capital. But I need someone who knows how to build trust, community, and structure." He paused, watching me closely. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than anxiety. I felt possibility. "Someone like you." I blinked, surprised by the directness of his words. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you equity," Dr. Rivera clarified. 20% ownership in the new practice, plus a salary comparable to what you were making before the corporate cut. "I don't just need an office manager, I need a partner." His words landed with the weight of a turning point. The idea was equal parts terrifying and thrilling. After nearly 20 years of stability and predictability, the thought of stepping into something new sent a jolt of fear through me, but also something else. Something that felt an awful lot like hope. "I don't know, Dr. Rivera," I said slowly. "Starting a new practice from scratch, that's a big leap." "Not from scratch," he said gently, setting his glass down. "With your experience, your connections, your understanding of what people in this community really need, it wouldn't be starting over. It would be building something better." I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl into soft patterns. He was right. I had spent decades nurturing relationships, solving problems, and showing up for people. But would that be enough? Mariner Dental would see this as a direct challenge. They'll view it as competition, I said. Dr. Rivera smiled with a glint of defiance. They should. On the drive back to Harborview, my thoughts spun in 1,000 directions. My practical side listed every reason to stay put, keep the paycheck, endure the change, avoid the unknown. Familiarity, after all, had its comforts. I was 56 years old. Was now really the time to make such a risky change? But when I pulled into the parking lot and saw the sterile Mariner Dental logo hanging where our old hand-painted sign had once proudly stood, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about the money. It was about respect, about value, about everything I had poured into this place being dismissed as overhead. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Rivera lit up the screen. No pressure, but the office space next door to Harborview just became available. Perfect location, just saying. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. His audacity was equal parts bold and poetic. That evening, I sat at our kitchen table across from my daughter, Catherine, who stared at me, fork midair, as I shared the news. "You're considering what?" she asked, eyes wide. "Opening a new practice with Dr. Rivera," I said, forcing a confidence I wasn't sure I fully felt. "As a partner, not just a staff member." She blinked. At 28, Catherine had inherited my cautious, plan everything twice approach to life. Her concern was not surprising. "Mom, you've been at Harborview practically my whole life. And now you're talking about opening a competing office right next door? That sounds risky." I poured more iced tea into our glasses, stalling just a moment to gather my thoughts. Sunday dinners had always been sacred between us, a place for honesty. And I needed her to hear me clearly now. "It is risky," I said. "But so is staying. Accepting that my work, my loyalty, is worth less than it was 3 months ago, that's not something I can do." Her expression softened. "I understand it's insulting. But starting a business at your age, in that spot, it just seems extreme, even for you." I smiled. "Even for predictable, play it safe, Elaine, huh?" "You know what I mean," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I just don't want you to get hurt, financially or emotionally." Her concern was valid. After her father left when she was 6, I'd built our life around consistency and caution. Our modest bungalow was nearly paid off. My retirement savings were healthy. I'd played by the rules. "I've been doing research," I said, rising to retrieve a folder from the sideboard. "Dr. Rivera has strong credentials, a good reputation, and the location is ideal. Most of our patients wouldn't even need to take a different route to get there." I sat back down and opened the folder, revealing neatly printed spreadsheets, margin notes, and timelines. "I've run the numbers," I told her. "Even with conservative projections for patient retention and startup costs, we could be profitable within 9 months. Over the weekend creating. Even with cautious projections, I estimated that with a modest percentage of patients choosing to follow me, we'd be turning a profit within 9 months. Catherine raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed despite herself. "You've really thought this through." "I have," I admitted. "But there's more to it than spreadsheets and projections." I took a breath, feeling the weight of what I was about to say. "This isn't just about money, Catherine. It's about standing up for myself for the first time in a very long time." The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with Lauren and Jason. They seemed caught off guard by my calmness as I took a seat across from them in the conference room. "I've reviewed your compensation adjustment proposal," I began, carefully using the kind of formal, corporate language they preferred. "Unfortunately, I won't be accepting the new terms." Jason exhaled, a flash of relief crossing his face. "I'm glad you're being reasonable, Elaine. With your cooperation, this transition can go smoothly." "I think you misunderstood," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not accepting the terms because I'm resigning." A long silence followed, tense and charged. The flicker of surprise on both their faces gave me a small, quiet satisfaction. Resigning? Lauren echoed first. But where would you even go? You've been here practically your whole career. I'll be helping to establish a new dental practice, I replied simply. Jason's jaw tightened. Elaine, I need to remind you that your employment contract includes a non-compete clause. I offered a polite smile, one that masked far more than it revealed. I reviewed the paperwork with an attorney yesterday. The clause was part of Dr. Monroe's original contract, but it wasn't properly carried over when Mariner Dental took ownership. Legally, it's unenforceable. That wasn't entirely true. There was still legal gray area. But judging by the look of unease that spread across their faces, the point had landed. You can't be serious, Lauren said, her voice rising. After everything this practice has done for you? Everything this practice has done for me? I repeated, a trace of anger finally slipping into my tone. I built this place. I'm not competing with Harborview, I'm reclaiming what I helped create. As I stood to leave, Jason's voice hardened. The corporate office won't take this lightly. They have resources you can't imagine. I paused at the door and turned. And I have relationships you can't replace. The next 3 weeks flew by in a blur. I fulfilled my notice period with the same professionalism I'd always brought to the job. I trained my replacement, Jennifer, a polite but visibly anxious 24-year-old with a fresh business degree and no dental background. Meanwhile, I worked with Dr. Rivera in the evenings, finalizing the lease agreement for the new office space, ironically located just steps from Harborview. Do you think they suspect anything? Adam asked one night as we reviewed the floor plans in his kitchen. They know I'm joining a different dental practice, I said with a knowing smile. They just don't know where. He chuckled. The location's going to be a bit of a shock. It's a practical business decision, I said, using the same sterile phrasing Lauren and Jason liked to use. The demographic data supports it. But the truth ran deeper. The location wasn't just practical, it was poetic. It would allow patients an easy transition if they chose to follow me, yes. But it would also serve as a reminder to Lauren and Jason of what, exactly, they had dismissed. On my final day, there were no warm send-offs from management. Lauren and Jason had become increasingly distant as the end of my tenure drew near, limiting contact to curt emails and short updates. But the staff, sensing the weight of my departure, organized a small lunch in the break room. The staff had organized a small farewell gathering during lunch. There were homemade sandwiches, a few cupcakes, and a simple card signed by everyone. It wasn't grand, but it was heartfelt. We're going to miss you, Elaine, Maya said, handing me the card. It won't be the same without you. I hugged her tightly. I'll miss all of you too. Then I added, with quiet sincerity, if any of you ever need anything. I'm not going far. Later that afternoon, I began packing up the personal items I'd kept at my desk over the years: family photos, thank you notes from patients, the small ceramic vase Catherine had made in 5th grade. As I tucked the last picture frame into a box, I heard a knock on the doorway. Lauren stood there, arms crossed loosely. Elaine, I hope you understand this wasn't personal, she said, adopting a conciliatory tone. The compensation changes were based on Mariner Dental's standard policies. I looked up at her from the box of memories. That's the problem, Lauren. Dentistry is personal. These aren't just patient files. They're people who've trusted us with their health, their fears, their families. She exhaled, glancing toward the hallway. The industry is changing. Small practices just can't compete with corporate efficiency and buying power. Whatever it is you're planning, it won't work. I closed the box and stood up. Maybe not. But I'm not trying to compete with corporate dentistry. I'm offering an alternative. As I walked out to my car with the box in my arms, I spotted Mrs. Lancaster, our 82-year-old patient who had brought in muffins every Friday without fail. She was struggling with the new automatic doors that had replaced the old, familiar manual ones. Let me help you, I said, setting down the box and walking over. Oh, Elaine, thank goodness, she said, her wrinkled hand patting my arm. Everything's changing so fast. These new chairs, that confusing check-in screen, and they told me they're ending the emergency senior appointments. What am I supposed to do if my denture cracks on a weekend? I studied her and guided her through the doors, feeling a renewed determination surge within me. Actually, Mrs. Lancaster, I'm making some changes of my own, I said gently. Can I give you a call next week? I'd love to tell you about them. That evening, I drove by the soon-to-be site of our new practice. The storefront was still empty, echoing with potential, but a freshly mounted "Coming Soon" Magnolia Family Dental sign now hung in the window, visible from the parking lot of Harborview Dental. My phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. Just drove by the future office. Bold move, Mom. I'm proud of you. For the first time since Lauren and Jason had delivered that cold, clinical compensation cut, I felt at peace. This wasn't just a career shift. It was a reclaiming of my dignity, my values, and my future. The transformation from an empty shell to a vibrant practice unfolded faster than I had imagined. Dr. Rivera had secured a business loan thanks to his impeccable credit and our thorough business plan. We chose paint colors, designed a reception area with soft lighting and real furniture, not cold, corporate gray, and ordered the equipment ourselves. While the contractors worked on the build-out, I focused on assembling our team. My first call was to Maya. Over coffee at a quiet cafe near Forsyth Park, I told her the truth. I can't match corporate benefits. Not yet, I said. But what I can offer is the time to actually connect with your patients, not just race through cleanings. She smiled. You had me at actually connect. They're giving us 15 minutes per cleaning now. It's just not enough. Within 2 weeks, I had recruited Maya and 2 other former colleagues from Harborview. I didn't feel guilty, not really. I wasn't poaching. I was offering a path forward to those who were already feeling the loss of what our practice used to be. Solicit their clients, but there was nothing stopping patients who already knew me from reaching out once they heard I'd left. And in Savannah, word spreads faster than summer heat. Elaine. I saw the sign next door. Mrs. Powell exclaimed when she called my personal cell one afternoon. Are you really opening a new dental office with Dr. Rivera, right next to Harborview? We are, I confirmed, smiling at her excitement. Our grand opening is next month. Well, count me in, she said without hesitation. When that sweet young girl at the front desk told me you'd left, I nearly cried. It's just not the same without you. She paused, then asked, can you transfer my records from Harborview? You'll need to request that directly from them, I explained gently, but we'd be happy to help walk you through the process when you come in. That conversation wasn't the only one. Over the following weeks, my phone rang often. Old patients, former neighbors, even a few former colleagues, all reaching out after spotting the Magnolia Family Dental sign or hearing about the new practice through word of mouth. I was careful not to contact anyone first, but I never discouraged those who found me. 2 days before our official grand opening, I was carrying a box of office supplies into the new lobby when I heard a familiar voice behind me. This is how you repay Harborview's investment in you? Jason snapped, gesturing at the bold new signage. His face was flushed with anger. By opening a competing practice literally next door? I set the box down calmly. I don't owe Harborview anything, Jason. I gave that practice 19 years of my life. And now you're accusing me of sabotage. We've already had 68 patients request records transfers, he hissed. 68. His face turned a deeper shade of red, and I couldn't help but wonder if Mariner Dental had finally realized what they'd lost. The corporate office is furious, he growled. A petty part of me wanted to smile, but I kept my expression composed. Patients have the right to choose, Jason. Isn't that what you said when you cut my pay by 30%? This is the free market at work. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a threat. This isn't over. Mariner Dental has attorneys who specialize in cases like this. Cases like what exactly? Came Dr. Rivera's voice as he stepped into the room behind me. His tone was easy, but his posture carried quiet authority. A dental practice legally operating in a commercial zone? Patients making informed choices about their healthcare providers? Nothing illegal about that. Jason's eyes shifted between us. "You've made a powerful enemy," he said finally, before turning and storming out. Dr. Rivera raised his eyebrows. 68 patients already? I nodded. And it's just the beginning. The grand opening of Magnolia Family Dental surpassed even my highest hopes. We had scheduled 20 appointments to ease into our first day. But the waiting room was packed. Old patients came to drop off flowers, wave hello, and book their next visits. By lunchtime, we had scheduled an additional 47 appointments. By the end of the day, the number had climbed to 83. "This is unheard of," Dr. Rivera said, scanning the numbers with amazement. "I've never seen a new practice take off like this." I looked around our newly finished space, sunlight spilling across soft blue walls and real wooden furniture that felt like home. "It's not about the practice," I said quietly. "It's about trust." From my office window, I could see directly into Harborview's waiting room. It sat mostly empty. And more than once that day, I spotted Lauren watching our bustling reception area through narrowed eyes. At 5 p.m., just as we were finishing our final appointments, Jennifer, my young replacement at Harborview, stepped hesitantly into our lobby. Looking nervous, Jennifer stepped into the lobby, clutching a folder. "Hi, Ms. Porter," she said, hesitating as if unsure whether to approach. I was wondering, do you need another administrative assistant? They're talking about letting me go. Apparently, the schedule isn't meeting expectations. My heart sank a little. She had only been at Harborview for 3 weeks. She looked down, her voice dropping. "Mr. Taylor says it's my fault, that I'm not retaining patients, but the systems keep changing and the appointment times keep getting shorter. Mrs. Lancaster yelled at me yesterday when I told her we couldn't fit in her emergency visit." I paused. We hadn't budgeted for another staff member just yet, but Jennifer didn't deserve to be scapegoated for Lauren and Jason's mismanagement. She was young, green, but she had tried. She'd walked into a mess she didn't create. "We can start you part-time," I offered, making the decision in the moment. "And if things keep growing the way they are, we'll bring you on full-time." The relief on her face made every penny of financial strain worth it. "Thank you, Ms. Porter. I promise I'll work hard." As Jennifer left the lobby, Maya approached, holding another stack of forms. 39 more record transfer requests, she said, eyebrows raised. "At this rate, we'll have half of Harborview's patient base by the end of the month." I took the papers and looked at each one. Names I recognized, families I had served, people who had chosen to follow me rather than stay with a practice that had treated me as expendable. "It's not about revenge," I said quietly, though I couldn't deny that the satisfaction blooming in my chest had that flavor. "It's about building something better." But still, watching Lauren's expression tighten through the window as she saw our growing line of patients, it was hard not to feel just a little poetic justice. 6 months after Magnolia Family Dental opened its doors, we had surpassed every benchmark in our business plan. What began as a risky leap had evolved into a thriving community practice with over 2,000 patients, more than 2/3 of them former Harborview regulars. The impact on our old neighbor couldn't be ignored. Through the dental community grapevine, we heard that Mariner Dental was considering selling the underperforming location. Jason had already been reassigned to a struggling office in Atlanta, and Lauren, still at Harborview, was reportedly trying to patch up the relationships that had unraveled under her leadership. "They're offering deep discounts now," Dr. Rivera said one morning as we reviewed our weekly schedule. "Corporate's not happy with the numbers." I wasn't surprised. Discounts won't fix their real problem. People don't want to be rushed through care like items on a conveyor belt. The difference between our two approaches was visible in every detail. Harborview now crammed appointments into tight blocks, sacrificing quality for volume. Meanwhile, Magnolia focused on time, attention, and comfort. Our patients were greeted by name, offered tea in the waiting room, and never rushed out of the chair. Mrs. Lancaster, who once struggled with the new automated system next door, now brought her famous muffins to us every Friday. We'd also reinstated the emergency senior appointments, a small change that meant the world to many in our older community. The walls of our waiting room were painted in soft coastal tones, accented with local artwork and the same warmth that once defined the old Harborview before corporate branding stripped it bare. One Tuesday afternoon, I looked up from my desk to see Lauren standing in my doorway. She looked nothing like the poised, sharp-edged manager I remembered. Her hands fidgeted. Her expression was uncertain. "Do you have a minute?" she asked softly. "Of course," I said, gesturing to the seat across from me. She sat, shoulders hunched. "I wanted to ask, how did you do it? How did you build such loyalty with your patients?" The question wasn't accusatory. It was sincere, maybe even desperate. I leaned back, folding my hands. 18 years of treating people like people. Not numbers. Not revenue generators. She nodded slowly, eyes downcast. "There's no corporate manual for that," I added gently. "I'm being transferred next week," Lauren said quietly. "The regional manager told me Harborview's decline is one of the worst in the company's history." I could have responded with satisfaction or smugness, but in that moment, as I saw the genuine weight in her eyes, I felt something unexpected empathy. "I'm sorry it didn't work out," I said gently. "Don't be," she replied, standing to leave. "You proved your point. I just wish we'd seen your value before it was too late." As she walked out of my office, I sat in silence for a moment. The victory I had once imagined, watching Harborview falter, suddenly felt hollow. Because this journey was never about their failure. It was about creating something better, something healing and human. A space where patients felt cared for and staff felt proud. That night, over dinner, Catherine watched me with curious eyes. "You seem different, Mom. Happier?" I thought for a moment, then smiled as I refilled our water glasses. "I am." For years, I had wrapped my identity around Harborview. Around loyalty, reliability, and putting others first. And when that was dismissed, I thought I'd lost who I was. But the truth, I realized, was quite the opposite. I didn't lose anything, I told her. "I found something better," my own voice. Catherine raised her glass with a soft grin. "To finding your voice at 56. I clinked mine gently against hers, thinking of everything that had led me here, from long days at a front desk to late-night spreadsheets, from taking orders to making decisions, from being overlooked to being fully seen. In the end, Lauren and Jason's attempt to reduce my worth had done the exact opposite. They revealed just how much I brought to the table. Their cold business decision had sparked my personal awakening. And for that, strangely, I was grateful. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't getting even, it's moving forward. If you've made it to the end of my story, thank you for listening, for feeling, and for seeing me. Starting over in my 50s wasn't part of the plan. I never imagined walking away from the practice I'd given nearly 2 decades of my life to, but when I was told that my value could be summed up in a percentage, 30% less than the person I'd always been, I had a choice. I could shrink, or I could rise. I chose to rise. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been told you were too old, too expensive, or just not worth it anymore? Have you faced that moment where you realized your loyalty wasn't returned? Please share your experiences in the comments. Your voice matters, more than you know. And if my journey resonated with you in any way, tell me. Your encouragement helps me and others know we're not alone. Here's my advice. Never let someone else put a price tag on your worth. You have decades of wisdom, compassion, and experience that no spreadsheet can measure. And if you're standing at a crossroads, wondering if it's too late to choose yourself, let me be the one to tell you, it's not. It's never too late to start again on your own terms. Subscribe if you believe in second acts. Leave a comment if you've ever had to walk away to find yourself again. And if you're still in that hard place, just know there's life after rejection. There's purpose after betrayal. And sometimes, The path forward is the one that leads you right back to yourself. You've got more power than they ever gave you credit for. Now it's your turn to use it.